those 6 guys tend to go a little bit sooner as well. So let's show you what the first round looked like here in our 10-team PPR mock draft. Now, Dave and Heath were not in this draft. I was. Our producer, Jack Capitorto, was as well. We're going to show you our teams and how those turned out. But here's what the first round looks like. And I guess the first surprise comes at number 5, Travis Kelce over Derrick Henry. We love Kelce, but Heath, to what you were talking about, taking one of these tight ends, would you consider Kelce at 5, knowing that Derrick Henry was still on the board?
I've done something like this a couple times this offseason, trying to see how it works out. In a 10-team league is the only way I would do it. I don't think you can consider him with the first 3 picks. You get to number 4, though, especially in a full PPR league, and I think you can consider it. I still prefer to go Henry, then Zeke, then Kelce.
And so Kelce would be 6 for you.
Right.
And then you see 2 receivers going in the first round, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Austin Eckler going over Aaron Jones. That's somewhat of a surprise, but Eckler in PPR clearly has a tremendous ceiling. Jones, again, now without his left tackle, David Bakhtiari placed on the PUP list, so he's going to miss at least the first 6 games of the season. So there's round 1, big surprise being Travis Kelce. I'll show you now round 2, and you see a lot more running backs coming off the board, Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb. You see the guys there, Saquon Barkley falling to round 2. No surprise in a 10-team league. Probably a little bit more of a surprise still in a 12-team league. But Josh Allen, the first quarterback off the board at 16 overall. No Patrick Mahomes in round 2. So, Dave, our projections on CBS Sports, which is powered by Sportsline, has Josh Allen as the number 1 quarterback. You said, I don't know if it was on our podcast or on HQ here, that you even considered moving Allen ahead of Mahomes.
I did.
But still a little surprising to see Mahomes not the first quarterback drafted. Is it a little surprising to you still?
Yeah, it's still a little surprising. It's not crazy surprising because everything that's come out of Buffalo, certainly in their preseason games and how they've operated this offseason, is that they don't really value running backs the same way that most of the other franchises across the National Football League do. That means that they're going to put everything in the basket of Josh Allen. That means he's going to have a lot of opportunities to throw passes, run for yards, score touchdowns. It's kind of the name of the game in fantasy football. Mahomes is going to do a lot of that too. But for Mahomes to be better than Allen, listen, he's going to have to flirt with 5,000 yards. I just think everybody agrees that that's something that he can do on top of getting close to 40 touchdowns.
Yeah, I don't see much argument for taking anybody over Patrick Mahomes just because of what we've seen over the last 3 years. We saw this thing last year with Rodgers and with Josh Allen and with Dak Prescott for 5 or 6 games where they got to that 30-point range. We'd never really seen that from anybody besides Mahomes and Lamar, and a bunch of guys did it last year because the league was a little bit different. I think it probably had something to do with not having a preseason. It probably had something to do with the way defenses played. I think you should expect that mostly to regress. So I'm more interested in the guys who did it before last year. That would be Mahomes and Lamar Jackson.
And so Allen is 3rd for you behind those 2 guys. So even more surprising for you to see Allen go as the first quarterback off the board. Let's go now to round 3, and we take a look at some of the guys being selected here, and still no Patrick Mahomes. So if you were playing it out, not taking a quarterback, makes it in your best interest to wait on somebody like Mahomes or Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray and Dak Prescott as well. But you see the 2 tight ends coming off the board here, Darren Waller and George Kittle. And then we get to 24 overall, and that's where DeAndre Swift comes in. So, Heath, you like DeAndre Swift. I don't think you're taking DeAndre Swift 24th overall in a 10-team league.
And this is where you have to look at ADP and see where people are being drafted. And in most of my drafts lately, DeAndre Swift has fallen into round 4, and that's in 12-team leagues. I think his ADP is down to around 40. The one thing I will say in defense of DeAndre Swift at 24 overall is I've got him ranked at 29. My projections are higher than that. I've just downgraded him because of injury. And I don't think you should worry as much about injury risk in a 10-team league. You should worry more about upside because you're going to have guys on your bench that you can play if he goes down. Still, he probably would have been there in the 3rd round.
Probably would have. And some of the other running backs that went after him, we'll show you in the 4th round. That was the 3rd round, so he was in the 3rd round because it's 10-team league. Right. So let's go now to the 4th round here, and now finally we see Patrick Mahomes come off the board, but some other interesting running back decisions that people were making. Specifically at 36 overall, James Robinson going ahead of Chris Carson. I don't know how often that's going to happen. It might, but I think it's still a little surprising that James Robinson's arrow has pointed that far that he's going ahead of somebody who, while he was better than him last year, Chris Carson maybe still in a better situation than James Robinson because of who Carson's sharing with compared to who Robinson is sharing with based on the coach who Robinson has now with Urban Meyer. So, Dave, I don't know if you have it ranked this way. I don't. I would rather have Carson over Robinson. It's close, but do you have Robinson ranked ahead of Carson?
1 spot ahead of Carson.
So you would do this?
I would do that, but I would there's still a running back that I haven't seen yet in this draft that I would take ahead of DeAndre Swift. So the Swift pick is still bewildering to me. This one isn't quite as egregious, seeing Robinson go ahead of Carson.
Who's the running back?
What's that?
Who's the running back?
Miles Gaskin.
Oh, Gaskin. Yeah, he fell to round 6 in this one.
I figure he got picked. It'd be weird if he didn't. That would be strange. But I do think that James Robinson does have a chance to see more work. Not as much as he had last year, but plenty of work in this offense now that Etienne's gone. His ceiling for catches is up more. I don't know where Carson is in that regard. And Carson's been a little 50-50 in terms of week to week.
You feel like his ceiling really is up for catches? Because
yes, I do.
I think the couple things at play here. One is he's not going to be on the field as much as he was last year. So that certainly benefited him because he was the guy. They didn't have anybody else that they used. They're going to use Carlos Hyde. As much as we hate it, they're going to use Carlos Hyde.
How much do you think they're going to use that?
More than we think because it's Urban Meyer.
That makes
it's
me
going to
ill.
be frustrating.
That makes me ill.
The other part of this is I think Trevor Lawrence is going to run more than Gardner Minshew did last year. And I know Gardner ran a little bit, but Lawrence was a 900-yard rusher in 3 seasons at Clemson. And I think he'll be more apt to take off. And we also have a hopefully healthy Laviska Shenault who battled some injuries last year. So I think Robinson, I don't know where his ceiling lies in terms of receptions. I don't think it's going to be as good because of Etienne's injury. I think it may be as you expect.
Where was it when Etienne was healthy, though?
Oh,
it's up from then.
Yes,
right.
Down
That's
from
the
last
point.
year.
It's down from last year.
He'll be somewhere in between, but I bet it'll be closer to last year than people think.
I don't think so.
I think he'll
You
be
share
okay.
that same sentiment, right? That it's not going to be as high.
I am more concerned about his playing time.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's going to be now. Look, Carlos Hyde could get hurt, and we could be right back where we were a year ago. But different coaching staff, a coach who's familiar with a veteran running back. I think it's going to be a little frustrating for James Robinson. So I would prefer Chris Carson. I would prefer Myles Gaskin in PPR as well. I think his ceiling is a little bit higher than James Robinson also. Let's go now to round 5, and then you see some more of the quarterbacks, at least in terms of the first pick, Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews, so a little run on Ravens. You see T.J. Hockenson, Kyle Pitts in this range as well. And then here's Gus Edwards, who's been the polarizing guy in terms of the last couple of days going in round 5, so 49th overall. So Heath in PPR, is this the right spot for him?
I think it's really close to the right spot. I still would rather see Myles Gaskin in this format than Gus Edwards. And I think the problem that Gus Edwards has in this particular respect, in a 10-team league, we just talked about how much you want to shoot for upside. I'm not sure he has a ton of PPR upside. I do think he definitely has the upside to outperform this cost, but not by as much as someone like Myles Gaskin does.
Yep, and again, Gaskin went, I think, the first pick in round 6. We're only going to show you the first 5 rounds here. Again, you can see the full results on CBSSports.com. But let's show you a couple teams here. So I had the first overall pick, and I started my team with, no surprise, Christian McCaffrey. But I did take a little bit of a different turn than I typically do because of it being a 10-team league. So you see here, I started with Christian McCaffrey. I took DeAndre Hopkins and Darren Waller with my next 2 picks, so getting the top receiver on the board and then the top tight end on the board. And then I did something that's a little different for me, taking Lamar Jackson with the next turn along with Chris Carson. So getting the second running back, getting the quarterback there, and then filling out the rest of my receiving core with some high upside guys. Jerry Jeudy, Brandon Ayuk. I was doing some multitasking, so I actually didn't realize that I took Jerry Jeudy, and I think it was like 3 rounds later I took Cortland Sutton as well. So Sutton fell. Don't necessarily want to rely on both those guys. That's why you see Laviska Shenault as the flex play here as opposed to the guy I drafted 1 round sooner in Cortland Sutton. But wanted to lock up the best quarterback that was available at the time, which was Jackson, who's my 3rd quarterback, and the best tight end at the time, who was Darren Waller. So a little bit thin in terms of star power at the receiver position behind DeAndre Hopkins, but I like this roster as a whole. So Dave, I'll let you grade my roster. Heath, you can grade Jackson.
So Lamar Jackson was a round 5 pick for you?
Was the first pick in round 5.
Okay, and Waller, obviously, you took ahead. We kind of had this unwritten rule about taking a quarterback and a tight end in your first 5 rounds, but you can get away with it in a 10-team league, and that's why I love that you did it. This is a perfect example of getting difference makers on your roster. You are set at quarterback. You are set at tight end. Obviously, you're good at running back. All you've got to worry about is Jerry Jeudy and Brandon Ayuk, and that's not a whole lot to really worry about, especially given the depth that you have at wide receiver.
All right, so Jack had the 10th pick, so opposite end of the spectrum. He picked with the last spot in the first round, and he started his team with Tyreek Hill and Jonathan Taylor. You see, he was the manager who got Myles Gaskin at a great price, first pick of round 6. So he ends up with Patrick Mahomes. I mean, this just felt like he's stealing all the way through on this draft. Mahomes, Taylor, Gaskin, Hill, Robinson, Deontay Johnson. No offense. I'm jealous of this team. I think this team's a little bit better based on some of the value that he got.
I mean, you say all those names. He's got Justin Fields, he's got Giovanni Bernard, and he's got Noah Fant, and Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill. It's A++ for me. Those are all my favorite players. This is a absolutely. This looks like it's almost an 8-team league. Fantastic job here by Jack.
Yeah, it's playing the board. Ending up with Patrick Mahomes in the 4th round. Myles Gaskin in the 6th round. He still has Damian Harris as the 3rd running back as well. So kudos to you, Jack. It must be you're listening to our show as we're talking about it as the draft process is unfolding for you. So Jack's going to be very happy about the grade from Heath. Hopefully we'd be competing in the championship if we were playing this one out, but we're not. But you can, check out the results of our 10-team league. For those of you playing in 10-team leagues, it'll be on CBSSports.com. Keep those tweets coming. Send them to us on Twitter using hashtag AskFFT.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.